Good morning and welcome to the Indiana University Kelley School of Business's Worldwide Roundtable in this new semester and new year. My name is Levon Schlegel and I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for International Business here at the Kelley School. Thank you all for joining us this morning as we begin this third series of the Worldwide Roundtables. During the next 36 hours, we will have distinguished speakers in Europe, ASEAN, specifically Indonesia and Thailand, and Mexico and Latin America, all gathering to explore the idea of shared value in business. As always, it takes a global team to put these events together. I would like to thank Professor Tim Fort from the Kelley School, Jen Goins and Allison DeWitt from the Office of Development Engagement at Kelley, Roy Hooper from the IU Alumni Association, Peter Bunjaran from the IU ASEAN Gateway, Lucero Gillian at the IU Mexico Gateway, Andrea Adam Moore at the IU Europe Gateway, and Ali Batten, Director of the IU Global Gateways. I also want to thank Rob Clendening, Rebecca Salerno, and George Lahakas from Kelley Marketing, Jeff Poland at IIB, and finally, I would like to thank Tim Smith from IIB, without whom this project would not have happened. As I mentioned, today's discussion will explore the idea of shared value in business. In 3 different sessions, we will explore what shared value is in the traditional sense of the words, but also how business should see their shared responsibility in what has become a very interconnected world. No longer should any business leader live in the vacuum of not understanding the broader impact of their business choices and decisions. They should want to make sure that they are more than just good caretakers of their business, but also making positive contributions to their community, large and small. With so many business leaders taking on this challenge, the ways in which they make a positive contribution are many, both socially and economically. Each panel in this series will take a different look at the topic and explore the impact business is having on what is unmistakably a much smaller and more interrelated world. I am pleased to introduce today's moderator, Molly Fisher. Molly is the director of the IU Mexico Gateway Office. She most recently led the educational portfolio at the Center for U.S. Mexican Studies at UC San Diego, where she collaborated with other universities in the private sector to develop and implement a suite of workforce development pilots focused on STEM and language acquisition. Molly is an accomplished educator and social entrepreneur with nearly 22 years of dedication to serving the needs of local communities through education, economic development, animal welfare, and environmental program development. As an area specialist in Mexico, she has founded, directed, or redirected 8 successful nonprofits and social enterprises across the country. Molly brings extensive experience of working with students, parents, teachers, universities, and both the public and private sector into her role as the director of the IU Mexico Gateway. Molly is an Indiana University graduate with a BS in biology and graduate certification in secondary science education and has spent 5 years teaching in the classroom on both sides of the US-Mexico border. Thank you, Molly, for moderating today's important discussion.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for that warm introduction, Levon. It is really, really an honor to be here today with everyone. I feel like I'm amongst friends and really getting ready for a rich conversation about something that's deeply important, I believe, to the world and personally to me. The world is full of problems, as we know, but it's also full of amazing people doing amazing work. And I just love the concept of creating shared value and as a practice for creating economic value for all stakeholders and doing so in a way that creates value, not just for a financial gain, but also for society by addressing very specific challenges and needs. So before we get into this, I want to welcome my very distinguished guests. I'm so excited they're here. I'm going to read a little bit about them and ask them to go ahead and turn their cameras on so you can see them as I speak about them. So Ana Lilia Silva, Mariela Rojas and John Rasik, welcome today. Ana Lilia Silva is the Director of Global Strategy and International Initiatives at Kelley School of Business. She's a highly motivated individual, and I personally attest to that since we work together currently as well. She thrives at leading teams through a business problem when working in complex and uncertain environments. She enjoys coaching individuals and seeing them succeed. She recently returned to her home country, Mexico, and founded 20 Degrees Consulting with the purpose in mind to create an impact in communities, organizations, and individuals through global leadership programs. During her time at Kelley, she developed the global strategy for the MBA program and managed a portfolio of global experiences, including several consulting practices for small and medium-sized businesses and nonprofit organizations in developing countries. She's coached student leadership teams on how to best deliver a meaningful experience for student participants and help them develop global leadership skills. She's also coached MBA students, especially international students, on career development and helped them ease their adjustments to the US culture. Prior to Kelley, Ana Lilia spent more than 10 years working in sales and marketing for Fortune 500 companies, and she has specialties in leadership development, mentoring, coaching, strategic planning, and business development. Thank you for being here, Ana Lilia. And I'm also excited to welcome another fellow alumna, Mariela Rojas, who is the Executive Director for FUNED in Mexico. Mariela holds a bachelor's degree in business administration for the Autonomous Technological Institute of Mexico, here in Mexico known as the ITAM, and a master's degree in philanthropic studies from Kelley School of Philanthropy at Indiana University. She holds a graduate certificate of nonprofit management, also from IU. And she's worked for 12 years now for FUNED and is the current executive director. FUNED stands for the Mexican Foundation for Education, Technology, and Science. And the mission is to contribute to the professional growth of future Mexican leaders by supporting master's degrees in the best universities and programs in the world. So she bridges the gap for the students here in Mexico who want to study abroad and bring back that expertise to Mexico. She participates as a reader in the evaluation panel for the Schwartzman Scholars Program and is a member of the editorial board of HuffPost Mexico. Thank you, Mariela, for being here today. It's wonderful to see you. And finally, John Rasik, who's the area coordinator in comprehensive design, senior lecturer of comprehensive design, and director of Serve Design Centers, and also not in his title there, the founder of Play 360, an awesome NGO that we'll be talking a little more about. John is a multidisciplinary designer whose scope of expertise spans architectural, landscape, and industrial design. His research is concerned with the design and creation of systems of productions where the design emerges from the system. This research is articulated through the high-tech parametric modeling, digital fabrication, VR, AR, and the low-tech co-design in the developing world context. He founded the organization Play 360 in 2008, and this nonprofit trains nonprofits around the world to build low-cost educational resources. He has performed over 40 trainings in 17 countries, including Ethiopia, where he designed the first universal design playground in that country. To date, Play 360 has built over 130 playgrounds. I can't even imagine how many kids that has touched. In 2001, he received a design award from the American Institute of Architecture, Los Angeles chapter. In 2012, he was named one of the 40 under 40 in the AEC, which is Architecture, Engineering, Construction industry, as determined by Building Design and Construction magazine. In 2016, he was awarded and I have a problem pronouncing this, John, but the Secte Crucis, I think, award by his alma mater, the highest non-degree accolade that is bestowed on alumni who have distinguished themselves in the service of justice. He is a lead accredited professional. Before joining the IU Bloomington faculty, Rasik ran an architectural and furniture design studio for 10 years in Los Angeles. His work has been featured there in publications such as the New York Times and Time magazine. And he is headed to Sri Lanka in March for a Fulbright Scholar Fellowship for 4 months. So we are very excited about his future, his near future. So thank you, everyone, for being here today. And thank you to our audience. It's wonderful to have you. And so to get started, this is going to be a conversation, just so our audience knows we're not having formal academic presentations. We really want to talk to each other and learn from each other, and also receive questions from you in the audience. So please feel free to be sending us questions through the Q&A. But to get started, I'd really like to know about your perspective on what shared value creation has looked like in your region as a whole. So with other organizations, or for your actual organization that you currently are involved with or run. So what does that look like? And you're all doing this. You are all creating shared value. So how do you get others to follow you? And has that been a challenge? So I'm going to open that up and to anyone that might want to jump in, maybe Ana Lilia, since we talked about this a little bit before we get started. You want to lead us off with your perspective?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Yeah, I think this is a super hot topic, something that has been getting more and more focus. And I think corporations are more interested in creating impact. I mean, I guess in the past, it was all about profit and there was a little bit of social responsibility. But in the past few years, we have seen a totally shift in the trend, and the concerns that companies have, especially on when you think about, taking care of the planet, for example, and being able to impact the community where they're working. So we can talk about large corporations, and we're just talking about that, some of the things that huge brands have been doing, like Adidas. I just saw something that Kia launched during the Australian Open. Unilever, it's been amazing, just trying to just contribute to the good, right? It's not about profit anymore. And I think in the past, it was almost like that was the job of the NGOs, right? Only NGOs were taking care of that. Well, suddenly that's starting to shift. And I think that has led to a lot of also social entrepreneurs sort of emerging, saying, we also want to be part of this change. So I think this is, an amazing moment to actually try to incorporate, all these awareness into what we are doing. And I mean, I'm not an NGO, but I have worked with NGOs for the past 10 years, and I know how much they struggle, right, getting funding. And funding, unfortunately, it's very limited. So if they can figure out, for NGOs, I think the challenge is they have two challenges, right? One is, how do we start creating these social enterprises within our NGOs, but at the same time, how do we attract corporate funding as well and become part of that social mission that the corporations have? So I don't know what Marieli and Jen think about that, but I think there's a lot going on right now regarding this topic.
I totally agree. I think specifically right now in Mexico, I mean, I know globally because of the pandemic, but more particularly here in Mexico, we've seen that when we face a global crisis like we've been doing with COVID-19, and we need all three sectors of society, the private sector, civil society, the government, to really act on one common goal. I think that where the three must converge is exactly in shared value, no? Because as Ana Lilia said, funding is limited, but something that can really bring us together and try to make a bigger impact is try to put our cause first, our mission first. And the only way to do it is by building shared value in the corporations, in the public sector as well, trying to see the public good first. And well, I know Molly knows a little bit about this, but we started a project because of COVID-19 that was called Ponte la Verde, which was a very big call for the Mexican youth to really come up and try to bring ideas to the table to try to help with COVID-19. And they were all really social entrepreneur ideas. And what we really saw is that those ideas that really focused on shared value in maybe impact first, profit second, are the ideas that are still thriving and that are still working and have received a lot of good support through the other sectors of society and other corporations. So I think definitely it's something, as Analia said, it's more than just a hot topic, it's part of our new reality.
That is music to my ears to hear you say it like that, like just the part of a new reality. It's the new way of doing business. John, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think years ago you had you sort of had two poles. You had nonprofit or for-profit, and you sort of had to make a choice. And I think now it's a spectrum of different models. You know, there's B Corps, there's social entrepreneurship. And I think that, I mean, to be honest, I think it's people like my students, this sort of millennial generation who is pushing this in demanding it in a way from companies. You know, they don't want to participate in, for good or for bad, the sort of image of companies, you know, not doing good things for the world. So, yeah, I just think there's a lot more options now for ways of organizing entities. You know, you can be a for-profit with a heavy social mission, or you can be an NGO that dabbles in sort of profit-making activities. So, yeah, I just think that there's a lot more options.
Thank you for that. I couldn't agree more. And it's definitely been an exciting time to, I think, for all of us to be involved in these types of organizations. And I think one of the words that resonated there with me is it's a spectrum. And I think it's really fluid, right? Like we're all learning and growing together and finding the best ways to help our world and our communities. And you touched there on youth, and I think someone else did as well. And I want to go kind of in that direction. So I think we all agree that today, many of the youth today want to be part of an organization that can deliver on some type of promise, whether it's, you know, related to the environment, to community, to their ESG strategy, environmental social governance strategy. And in your experience with your own organizations or looking into other organizations, you know, is that a challenge? How do organizations create the right culture to engage and reinforce those behaviors to do that? What experience or interactions have you had with that? Have you had, like, go ahead, Marieli.
Well, I think I have the opportunity to work with a lot of millennials as well, with the youth, and seeing what master's degrees programs they're also looking for. They're looking for schools, particularly in the business area, that have subjects that can really help them redefine markets and products. They're thinking about how now not only how a product can be something to fulfill somebody's needs, but also how it can help or contribute another community. They're rethinking value chains. And I think something that's very, very interesting is that with technology, I think shared value has had a bigger weight and a bigger impact, because it also has enabled a lot of opportunities that otherwise they couldn't happen. So we can see, for instance, this roundtable that maybe it would have been impossible otherwise. No, we are sharing ideas, we're sharing this value, and we can see that also, well, in terms of education, in terms of mental health, in terms of being more environmentally friendly. So I think a big component has been also technology. I don't know, maybe John can tell us a little bit more about this, or what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that there's, I think we don't even understand, I think how our adoption of this sort of technology. And this has been around for a while, right? But now everyone knows how to Zoom. I mean, Zoom has become a verb. And so I think we don't quite understand how this is going to affect people's jobs and how cities will reorganize. I mean, I think about this a lot. All of a sudden, where you live doesn't matter anymore. You can get a job in Zurich and live in Indiana. I mean, that's been possible, but I think that will be accepted in a more widespread way. I think that, back to your question, Molly, I think from my perspective, I think that it comes from leadership, this creating the right culture. And it comes from kind of an honest integration of trying to weave together some of these ideas about how do we solve societal problems into the business model. And again, that's a spectrum, right? I mean, you could be at one end Tom's Shoes, where you're giving away a pair of shoes for every thing you're selling, or it could be some other version of that. But I think that idea of acting on the values that you espouse as a organization, I find that the millennials, again, back to this generation, they have little tolerance, and they can see through it. I think they can see through when organizations kind of bluff their way through what they're saying they're doing. So it's interesting to work with this millennial generation, and sometimes I have a lot of frustrations with it. But I think that they're keeping us honest, and I think it's a good thing.
And I would like to add another thing, Molly. I teach marketing and I teach social entrepreneurship. And a lot of times you only need to create that awareness. I mean, just help them figure out the right path to take. The ideas are there. I think the desire to create an impact is there. Sometimes what happens is that they are not totally aware of all the problems that the world is facing. And once you put all those problems in front of them, they start just thinking about, okay, this is how we need to solve it. And I'm just going to give you a quick example. Marketing, it's all about consumption, right? And that's how it's been taught in the past. Well, last semester, I decided to sort of do something different with them and try to talk about responsible consumption. Right. So it was really cool. I mean, at the beginning, they were looking at me like, what is she talking about? But throughout the different courses, and when they were learning about what other companies were doing, like Patagonia and again, Nike and all these big companies, they were like, oh, wow, I really want to be part of a company that's actually doing something like this. And eventually, I want to create a company that has or creates that social impact. So I think a lot of times with youth, I mean, they have great ideas, but it's just a matter of showing them the way, just a little bit of showing them a little bit of light, and then they'll just do magic. I mean, it's just amazing how much power and how much passion they have. So I think they are the ones pushing all that change, and pushing us to actually keep creating change and leadership, right?
Thank you for that, all of you. Oh, go ahead,
Sorry,
John.
Molly,
Yeah.
I just thought of an example that I think underlines maybe some of the things that were said. Ford is responding to again this millennial instinct to buy less, and to like people aren't getting their driver's licenses and they're not buying cars, and so Ford is thinking through thinking wider about mobility. And so they've, instead of just thinking about how do we build the next great car, it's how do we create shared ride systems, and how do we, it's forced them to open up their thinking about how do we still market transportation, but that's not just limited to cars. So I think that's an interesting response to this question about consuming less, and how do companies respond to that instinct by millennials.
Yeah, that's a great example. Thank you for sharing that, John. And the three of you have given me increased my hope in the future. I want to say I'm definitely an optimistic, hopeful person, but hearing from each of your perspectives, the excitement, I think, of the youth and that they're getting involved in these things and they're holding us responsible is really inspiring, and I hope hopeful to all of us. And someone touched on leaders, as I think actually I heard that from Anna-Lilia and John. Do you think that with this kind of newer movement, are you seeing in your organizations or organizations that you're working with or consulting for a new type of leader, a new type of leadership than the past? Have you seen leadership skills shift along with this new spectrum of types of businesses?
Yeah, definitely. I think what's happening, Molly, is that especially in large corporations, leaders have had to adapt to these new way of doing business, and I remember, reading from, the former CEO of Unilever saying, we gotta do these, this is the right way to do this. It's not only about profit and having our shareholders happy. We need to have the planet and the society happy as well. So I think there's a huge movement going on in terms of having this awareness and companies trying to figure out how to incorporate this social impact into their vision. Because some companies were born like that, and some companies have it inserted since their beginnings. But I think for some companies, they're still trying to figure out how to not only do social responsibility as something that they were doing at some point, but actually incorporating that as part of their way of doing business. So I think that's going to continue to be the challenge, but I think companies are more and more interested in actually taking part of that. And we know the clock is ticking. We know, companies know we don't have a lot of time in terms of, taking care of the planet and global warming and all that stuff that's going on. So I think there's a lot more commitment from companies actually trying to do something to change, all the damage that has been done to the planet, especially, in the past.
Thank you for that. Marieli, have you seen a shift in leadership?
Yes, I think what Ana-Lilia is saying is very true, and I think one of the biggest challenges that leadership is going to be facing in terms of this new reality, as I mentioned before, of being more socially committed, is accountability. I think that we need to also bring that point up, because a lot of companies like to say they have all this shared value creation and it's part of their marketing strategy. They're helping the rainforest, but are they really helping the rainforest? I think social impact studies play a very new, not a very new, but a very important role in terms of shared value, and it's going to be part of the company's documents just as valuable as financial statements, to really have impact indicators and see if there is a theory of change, what are they really creating. And I think leadership has to really focus a lot on that, because, well, as John was also mentioning, well, millennials are looking for meaning. They want to really contribute in their companies. But I think the key question here in strategic terms is going to be, are we really contributing, or how are we contributing?
I think that's a really great point. This idea of impact. I think in the world of NGOs, this particularly with larger funders, Gates Foundation being sort of top of mind for me. They are they're not accepting, they're demanding hard evidence for impact. And I think that's a good thing. I'm not sure if we're seeing that on the business side of things in terms of the social impact. And I think that hopefully that's where the next trend will go. But this idea of, there's a lot of greenwashing out there. There's a lot of wonderfully designed brochures that make people feel good. But are we really creating the impact that we say we are? I think that's a really important question.
And Molly, if I can add something related to impact, I think obviously metrics are amazing and tell you so much about what's going on. But when you actually get closer to the people that are being impacted and get a better sense of what's going on, in their lives and how their lives have been impacted in a positive way. I mean, that's when you say, everything that we have been doing or the organization has been doing, it's totally worth it, right? And if I can just share a quick example of something that we went through, we were working on helping, rural entrepreneurs in Guatemala. And, they were doing okay. And obviously they were not doubling their sales. They were at a stage where they were just sort of organizing their business. The cool thing that happened here that nobody was paying attention to was that this was a single mom living with a 60-year-old kid. Well, the kid started looking at what we were doing, working with her mom and, using all these different business frameworks and all that. Well, he got so interested in what we were doing that he said, this can really change. He was about to migrate to the US because he wanted a better life. After seeing, what that intervention was all about and just trying to learn a little bit more about business and understand how they could better manage their tiendita, he decided to stay. So maybe they were not doubling the business, maybe they were not hiring employees at that point, but just knowing that he decided to stay. And he decided to stay with his mom was a big enough impact that obviously later on resulted in doubling, sales and everything else, right? But that's one story that I really, really like. And sometimes, you need to look at metrics, but at the same time, you really need to look at the stories of these people that are being impacted, because sometimes we can't imagine how strong the impact is until we actually talk to them.
Analia, that is so powerful. Thank you for sharing that with us. I think all of you have kind of led from one question into this topic of impact and how do we hold each other accountable and how do we measure impact? What kind of impact are we measuring? And then in addition to that, something we haven't talked about, measuring impact is expensive. There's a lot of resources needed to do that and a lot of expertise to do that. So how do, for corporation, and please feel free to answer this from any perspective or all, but for corporations that are now trying to have, create shared value rather than just older school corporate social responsibility, how do they measure impact and how do we get the real story from them rather than, or in addition to the shiny brochures? And then the nonprofits that, these small community-based nonprofits that I know many of us have had experience working with, how do they measure impact? What's important? And also feel free to touch on, I think from your own perspective, how measuring your impact not only helps you tell the story to the world, but also how it helps the organization on their path to accomplish their mission. So I don't know, does anyone else have, John or Marieli, stories about impact and what your organizations have done?
Yes, well, we've had a couple of impact studies done at FUNED, but I think what Analina touched on is fundamental. I think I mean, the biggest challenge was to really bridge the gap between metrics and hard metrics, and how you can really get a nonprofit or an institution to be very institutionalized and try to find ways to really create outcomes and outputs and really get to the metrics. But then in the end, it happens like when you are being an entrepreneur. You can have a great idea, or you can have a magnificent purpose or shared values, but what really makes the change are the people committed to doing that. So I think in FUNED, for instance, we've had the opportunity to have big donations from Nacional Monte de Piedad, a very large nonprofit here in Mexico, that has given us those donations specifically to have our social impact studies done, because as you mentioned before, they're very expensive. And I think that the hardest part has been how to really bring down to the field everything that you sort of like think in paper and see how you're going to measure. Surveys are very complicated, focus groups are very complicated, but then in the end, as Ana Lilia mentions, when you really go down and reach to some stories. For instance, we had a very fantastic story about a girl who was first generation college student and was able to go from Cancun to Canada for her master's degree. And when she arrived at the airport, she was almost in tears, because it was the first time she had a passport. It was the first time she was getting on a plane. It was the first time she really had to prove that she learned English sort of online or whatever. No, she was going to have this very first contact and everything. And then that's when you realize that the ripple effect on what you're doing is like really big, no? Because all of the family was there, and really it's until you see the beneficiary that you really realize that what the impact is about, no? And how maybe a metric that can look very insignificant and little, it really has a great benefit for all.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Marieli. That's another powerful story of, you know, how the outside world is seeing all these numbers and the outputs and whatnot, but there's real lives behind those numbers, and the good work that you're all doing is really helping them in a positive way. John, with, was it 130 parks? I think Play 360 has done. I'm sure you have a number of stories of how you not only measure impact within your organization, but also some stories of things that you maybe have experienced in real life when have been in these countries doing work.
Yeah, well, I want to build off something that was said before, which is about people. People, it was a great point about it's hard to measure. I think that's what a lot of us are saying. It's hard to really measure impact when it comes to people, right? If we're counting widgets, that's easy. But if we're trying to count sort of long-term impact on individual level, that's really, really hard. And that's why people shy away from it, because it's so hard. Dealing with people it's messy, right? But I think it's, at every stage of the things that we do, people have to be at the center of it. We have to be listening to people before we start something. We have to understand what their problems are from their point of view, and then try to solve problems with that lens. So yeah, I think the metrics are the sort of the hard data is important for keeping people honest. That we're trying to understand the big picture, but with the caveat that there's lots of things that we don't understand about the things that we do, right? Both good and bad. You know, I'm sure there are playgrounds that we've built where it was a detriment to the community in the end. And we try to learn from that. But I do know that there's lots of good, positive, long-term impact. You know, some of the stories, and I think, again, to echo what was said before, was you just don't know what that impact's going to be. I mean, I remember we did this one park in Ethiopia, and there was this one guy who he helped us out for the week or 10 days, whatever it was. And he was quiet, but he was kind of standing on the side, kind of watching things carefully. And you know, one of our metrics is, can we train people, and then can they go and build their own playgrounds? And as soon as we left, this guy was on Facebook, and to this day, he is messaging me every day, and you know, other people in the organization. He is so passionate about the work. It didn't appear that way when we worked with him, but he is just chomping at the bit, and he's building playgrounds, and he's like building his like a business around this activity. So, I mean, that's a short story about you just don't know how that impact will manifest itself.
Thank you, John, for sharing that. And yeah, so true. Everything that you're saying, from the incredible amount of work, time, energy, and resources and expertise that need to go into measuring impact. And I don't know what you all think, but personally, I think that that's something that not a lot of people are aware of. You know, a lot of people, average person, just like wants you to know all of your impact results and don't maybe understand the complexities of it. And in the past, I know that a lot of funders wouldn't fund that kind of initiative within an organization. So I was really happy to hear that, Mariely, that OVPIA is funding that. Do you see with your funding situations, whether it's bringing in your own funding or working as consultants for others, do you see the trend that is something that more funding will be available for, and that or capacity building around?
Not particularly in these times, and specifically, I mean, not because of a cultural mindset, more of a economic and political situation here in Mexico. So I think worldwide is a trend. Here in Mexico, it's a little bit difficult at the moment. It's nothing. It's not a big priority, but that is why we should really give a shout out and advocate for more organizations to do it, and recognize those who are doing it, because they're really leaving the basis for when the situation is better economically to go towards that path.
Ana Lilia, how about with you, with the organizations? Yeah.
Well, in my case, I do see more and more donors actually looking to measure, right? I mean, they're not just giving out money without measuring the impact. And we're talking about that hard impact. They're not, and that, I guess it's always like the fight between the NGO and the donors, because they want to see, you know, that hard impact. And NGOs want to also talk about, well, this is what's happening. So just like the example that I gave you, you know, a lot of times these beneficiaries are not reaching the goal that the donor has set. However, their life is being completely, you know, impacted in a positive way. So sometimes, you know, there has to be a lot of conversation between the donor and the NGO just to kind of find that common ground, because it's a struggle. You know, you won't, a lot of times, especially when you work with the rural communities, you won't see those results right away. You know, so it's not immediate, and sometimes it just takes a little bit more time. So yes, I mean, I see that donors are more and more interested in evaluating, you know, and measuring that impact, and they set the very specific metrics that they want to see. But it continues to be a struggle. I mean, it's not easy. Data, it's not easy just to track the data. I mean, some things, when you're talking about the number of people you're impacting, maybe that's very easy. But when you're talking about, in my case, with entrepreneurship and businesses growth, it's really hard, because a lot of times you don't even have a baseline, right? They don't even have data for you to say, oh, okay, this is how much you sell now, how much you're going to sell tomorrow. So it's hard. It's a challenge. I mean, I think they're trying to set the culture. You know, they want the data, but it's really, really hard.
Yeah, definitely. And I can imagine in your situation in Guatemala, also the rural aspect of it, right? Like, I'm just imagining right now, data collection. It's one thing when we have our cell phones and technology and can enter it that way. But when we're talking about very sparsely located communities and having someone even get there to collect data, or yeah, and what does that even look like? And that kind of brought me back to another point that I think, Marieli, you were mentioning, is that's with technology. And I'm just wondering, in your own experiences with increasing and improving technology, and your experience with measuring impact over the years, do you think that that's going to be something that will help us to measure impact? Have you seen that in Guatemala, for example, Ana Lily, in some of these communities, and are they able to send any kind of information that way, rather than when we used to have to go to the community to collect information?
Yeah, I think it's changing. I mean, even the NGOs, you know, are using different systems and softwares to actually track all that. You know, it's still a challenge. Communication continues to be a challenge. Some people, or some beneficiaries in the rural communities, already have smartphones, but a lot of them don't, right? So you still need a person actually to go out there and try to figure out, you know, that data. The good thing is that, you know, NGOs are seeing that need, because again, donors are requesting that. So they are putting the resources in place to actually be able to track that. You know, I remember one of the organizations I work for, you know, they just didn't have that data. So moving from not having any data to now we need to import or enter all that data into a new system was chaotic. You know, it was, you know, that systematization was overwhelming. But I think it's going to happen. I mean, little by little, it would continue to happen. With the pandemic, I think a lot of these rural entrepreneurs, it was amazing, because, you know, they were having sessions online. I don't know how that happened, but they managed to make it happen, you know, and they were using their cell phones and just buy enough cell phone time to actually be able to connect. So I think, you know, digital literacy will continue to be a challenge, but at the same time, I think, you know, the pandemic is sort of helped with that. So little by little, that will continue to change in the region, especially in those very poor areas.
Yeah, just to build off that, with COVID and technology, because we are an organization that has to travel, and or traditionally has traveled, and we're building on the ground with communities, with COVID, we've had to change our model, and we've focused on, well, we've made the assumption that people have access to technology. Now, that's not going to be the case all over the place, but with the people that we're trying to target, which are people who we can train as project managers, who can work with the community members to build playgrounds, we're making the assumption that they have access to technology. I think COVID, in our discussion, you know, COVID, the need for communication with cell phones and things, that has pushed, I think, people's adoption of of all this kind of technology. And so that's helped us to change how we work. It's also changing the people that we're reaching, so we've put together a series of courses on how to work with community first, and then how to build a playground second. And we've sort of sent this out in the world, and people who are signing up for this who we never would have talked to before. So they are people who are not connected to large organizations necessarily. They are sort of individuals who want to make changes in their own community, and just through Facebook and the ability to stream some content, they're able to access hopefully something that can help change their community.
Yeah, I agree. I think, well, in my experience, although we cannot assume that a lot of people have access to technology, I think more and more people are having smartphones and internet connections, and governments are planning to have free Wi-Fi. And I think technology is going to really play a very significant role in terms of being a democratizer towards certain areas. No, we see it in education. Right now, when schools shut down, technology was a way for people to get to know their teachers or attend to classes. In FUNED specifically, with some of our projects, we started doing some virtual fairs. So for the first time, we had a lot of students from Chiapas, even from the jungle area, from Chihuahua indigenous people who want to study master's degrees abroad that cannot, or more than, not only that they could not afford economically to go on a university roadshow, but they did not have that in their top of mind. So we created this virtual university fairs, and they were able to get to know the admissions people, get to know the programs. And there were areas where the internet connection was not great, but otherwise they wouldn't have got to know all of this. So I think technology really plays a very big role in terms of impact and what you can do. It's a very big catalyzer for a mission.
Thank you for that, Marielyn, John, and Lilia. It's really fascinating to see how that we were all using technology before and it was coming along, and then the big push, and how that will not only help the individuals in their communities have this access, but also the organizations in terms of being able to collect the data and analyze it. But that being said, it comes back to, and you've all touched on this, the people, right? And so it's the people that we're benefiting, and we need people, and we need humans that are out there using the technology in the right way to collect the data. And so it's not we need the human technology interaction to continue on this. I can't believe we're almost at our time. The audience, you still have a few minutes if you want to ask a question or two. And I just have one final question for all of you. And that is, in the past 20 years or so that we've kind of all been working in this field, have you seen a difference with collaboration amongst organizations? Has it always been like everybody working in silos, or do you see people working together and helping each other to create this shared value? I'll start with you, Ana Lilia, because I know you work with lots of organizations.
Yeah, I think there is more collaboration. I was trying to think if that happened because of COVID and everything that we were discussing, or if that was even before that, and I'm not sure. But I think, yes, I mean, I think there's more collaboration, especially if you think about, you know, these 3 sectors that Marieli was talking about at the beginning. I think there's more collaboration between or among those 3 sectors. And if we can add a 4th sector, which will be the social entrepreneurs, I think there is definitely more collaboration. I think because of these big companies wanting to create social impact, they're looking to partner with NGOs and looking to, you know, always for the right partner. And at the same time, as I mentioned before, NGOs are also looking to partner with these big corporations. So, you know, if you think about also, and I don't think we have talked a lot about social investment, for example. So social investment has also become huge. So I think that has also opened doors to different type of collaboration. Again, it's not only getting funding as it used to be in the past. I think this is all changing pretty fast, and the needs are growing. So yes, I mean, I think I think there's a lot of partnerships going on, and I think that will continue to happen, hopefully. I think everybody can get, you know, very positive things from you know, this partnership among these 4 sectors.
Thank you for that. John, Marieli, have you seen a shift in collaboration at all, or and speaking to what Ana-Lilia said about, was it the COVID shifting that, or was it, you know, the natural pathway that it was taking?
I think it was part of the natural pathway, but certainly, I mean, definitely COVID helped it get bigger. No, I think when the COVID started, a lot of things had to change really fast, but definitely there's been a lot more collaboration. I think as Ana-Lilia was mentioning, well, we see it in different things or different ways things are getting done, like social investment, impact investment. And when we talk about impact investment, we really need to think about the different sectors, as Ana-Lilia was mentioning. You know, on the one hand, we have to identify a problem that we need to fix. We need to really find the metrics. We need to see that it creates an impact, but also creates a profit for it to be sustainable. So in order for all of that to happen, all of the actors need to collaborate. And I think we're doing it well. And as we mentioned previously, also technology has been this big enabler, because we can cross borders, we can cross mindsets, we can change how things are done, be a little bit more flexible. So definitely, I think the collaboration is greater right now.
Just to add to that, I think that yes, I think the collaboration is increased, but I also think that you know, organizations aren't necessarily staying in their lane about I'm just a nonprofit, or I'm just a for-profit. Again, it's that idea of blurring boundaries and stealing ideas from one area and taking that on. But I think that's happening. People are experimenting with you know, how to organize and how to do business in a way to achieve some of these larger goals.
Thank you for that, all of you. You know, I think I said at the beginning, the world is full of problems, but it's really inspiring to hear from all of you about all of the work that you're doing to combat those problems. And in addition to that, this momentum of the millenniums and the youth that are keeping us honest and keeping us on track, our donors that are keeping us responsible in terms of impact and measuring it, and this collaboration piece, right, where hopefully, you know, not everyone, but many organizations and companies and along that spectrum are working together in some way, shape, or form to reach the greater good. And, you know, we all have our individual missions that we're trying to accomplish, of course, and our individual goals. but with this, shared value shift, that we're also looking at people, planet, and not just profit, but people and planet as well. So we're at our time. It has been just a great hour with all of you. I feel like we're amongst friends, and I hope we can all stay in touch with each other and continue to support each other along this really important journey. And a huge thanks to Kelley School of Business and the Institute for International Business for hosting us. Shout out to Levon and Tim Smith. You guys have been phenomenal to work with, and we're so excited to be here with you. And to my colleague Lucero at the Mexico Gateway, and our wonderful simultaneous translator, Victoria. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our audience, and we look forward to staying in touch.